another Through the Bible. Today we're doing the book of 2 Thessalonians. The second letter Paul wrote to the Thessalonians, the sequel, the quick follow-up because they didn't understand the first one and still had lots of problems.
I just read 2 Thessalonians.
You just read it. Oh, good. It deals with a lot of the same issues that 1 Thessalonians dealt with. It's pretty interesting. Are you guys out of pens? I noticed we were low on pens.
I mean, we have a few double-sided ones.
Who else needs a
I may
pen?
not have constructed.
So basically, from what I've read, this letter comes really quickly after 1 Thessalonians. Remember that Timothy, they were only in Thessalonica for a short amount of time. Then the Jews stirred up a mob and kicked them out of town, and they had problems. What?
He keeps apologizing for causing problems.
Well, he feels bad. And then persecution has continued against the Thessalonians. It has not gotten better. It's actually gotten worse. So even in the amount of time that happened between 1 and 2 Thessalonians, the persecution has gotten worse, okay? Not better. So Timothy brought back the letter, and then somehow they got another report, and things have not gotten better. Things have gotten more difficult, and also more confusing. What were some of the things they were confused about in the first letter that Paul addressed?
They're dead friends.
They're dead friends regarding the end times, right? When is Jesus coming back? So Paul sent a letter to clarify all the confusion, and that helped a lot, right? Actually, it brought more confusion because somebody forged a letter that said it was from Paul. Paul refers to this letter, and tricked them, and it said that that Jesus has already come, that the second coming has already happened, and so they're even more confused now. Okay, so they had false teachers and forgeries going on. So even back then, it was so basically Paul's writing this letter only a few months later. If we look back to when First Thessalonians was written, also 51 AD. This is only a few months later. Paul is still in Corinth, which is nearby, but he probably feels like he can't go back there because he'll probably get arrested. Remember, Jason got arrested. Other people, Christians, were getting arrested, and Paul had to skedaddle and get out of there because he was going to get in big trouble. So just a few months after 1 Thessalonians, Paul again wrote this letter to the young church in Thessalonica. Thessalonica...
Doesn't he call it Thessalonica or something?
Oh yeah, you're right. They call it Thessalonica in the video. I don't know which is right. Probably they're right. They probably did more research than me. So again, 51 AD, written from Corinth. So this is a quick follow-up. Just a few months later, Paul's writing this letter. And that's probably why it's so short. It's only 3 chapters long. Main characters, again, Paul, Timothy, and Silas. Silas? Who's Silas?
Yeah.
Paul, okay. So if you remember back to the first traveling missionary companions were Paul and who?
Silas.
No.
Barnabas.
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 Paul and Barnabas did the first missionary journey together. Then they went to go on a second missionary journey, and Barnabas wanted to bring his friend, who?
Silas.
Timothy.
Timothy.
We
Who's
second
someone?
this.
I don't know.
A young one.
One of the gospel writers.
Luke. John. Matthew. Mark. Matthew.
Mark.
Luke. John.
So, I guess actually Mark was on part of the first journey, and then he went home, back to Jerusalem or something. I think Jerusalem, because he needed to check on his mom or something. I don't remember why. It was a family thing, and then that really bugged Paul. So Barnabas was like, let's give Mark another chance. He kind of ditched us last time. Let's give him another chance. And Paul was like, heck no, I'm not taking that guy. He ditched us last time. And Barnabas was like, no, we should take him. Paul and Barnabas split. And Paul and Barnabas don't go on any more missionary journeys together. But it actually is cool because they had this disagreement, but it actually doubled the efforts, right? Now there's 2 missionary journeys. So Barnabas takes Mark, and they go on spreading the gospel. And then Paul takes Silas, and they go on spreading the gospel. I don't know. He's just like, hey, young dude, you want to go on a trip? And they're like, sure. Let's go spread the gospel. This is discipleship. It's awesome. And then they meet Timothy along the way. Timothy is from Ephesus, I believe. Did I remember that right? And then so now Timothy's with them too. Anyway, cool things. Discipleship happens. Okay, so Silas is with them as well. That's Silas. So the purpose of this book is to once again, it's almost the same, clear up the confusion about the second coming of Christ. Okay? So the purpose is to clear up confusion about the second coming of Christ. Unfortunately, I'm not going to say Paul's letter wasn't good, but I don't know. It's mainly because they read it and were still confused. And then there's this other second fake letter that got spread around that Paul refers to. So in chapter 2, chapter 1, they're talking a lot about the persecution. Persecution has gotten worse. Paul is thankful for them, thankful for their faithfulness. Verse 4, we proudly tell God's other churches about your endurance and faithfulness in all the persecutions and hardships you are suffering. And then he tells them, God will use this persecution to show his justice and make you worthy of his kingdom for which you are suffering. So he says, it's making you stronger, but also this is a cool promise from Paul, from God. In his justice, he will pay back those who persecute you. So he is talking about that the people who are persecuting the church are going to get punished. And this punishment can happen in this life or the next, right? God will, when Jesus appears from heaven, he'll come with his mighty angels, flaming fire, bringing judgment on those who don't know God and those who refuse to obey the good news of our Lord Jesus. They'll be punished with eternal destruction for whoever separated the Lord from his glorious power. Separated from the Lord and from his glorious power. So Paul is just reminding them more. It is about the end times when Jesus comes back. What's going to happen to the guys that persecuted them?
Worse things.
Punishment. What? They're going to die. Eternal destruction, right? This is actually this word here, eternal destruction. You ever read about in the Bible it talks about how destruction is to be destroyed, right? But what is eternal destruction?
Continually being destroyed.
That means that you're lasting.
Destroyed forever.
People have a hard. This is some people believe hell is not forever.
It's just eventually you.
Yeah, so annihilationists would be that viewpoint of a non-eternal hell, because the Bible does use destruction language. It sounds like you'll eventually stop existing.
Which most would rather.
I like that theology in that it's that would be nice if it were true, but I do not believe it is.
But if it were
eternal
nice,
destruction.
What's the point of going to hell?
Well, I just believe it would be nice. It sounds nicer to me that people don't have to suffer forever and ever and ever. Now, that's the just and right thing to do, and I think God made us to be eternal beings, so to make us cease to exist would take away our nature. But I don't. But that word that just made me think of that. That's a total tangent. But I do believe hell is eternal. So that word eternal destruction.
Maybe they just turn us into beetles and send us back on Earth.
Well, that's reincarnation.
Oh
yeah.
my.
So no. Okay. So
Why Beatles?
the people who are punished or persecuting the church will be punished if they don't become believers. And then here's this chapter 2 again. Let us clarify some things about our Lord Jesus and how we will be gathered to meet him. So remember what 1 Thessalonians said. We will be gathered to meet the Lord in the air. The dead in Christ will rise first. Talking about the rapture time. Don't be so easily shaken or alarmed by those who say that the day of the Lord has already begun. Don't believe them, even if they claim to have had a spiritual vision, a revelation, or a letter supposedly from us. Okay? So there's a fake letter running around, supposedly from Paul, Silas, maybe Timothy. Don't be fooled by what they say, for that day will not come until there's a great rebellion against God, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the one who brings destruction. So Paul is saying, hey, there's a fake letter going around that's saying that the Lord has already come back, and you missed the boat. Sucks to be you. And so they're all freaked out because oh, we missed Jesus. He came already. And so they're freaking out, and they're worried, did we do something wrong? We missed Jesus. And Paul's like, no. There's a bunch of stuff that has to happen first, and he starts talking about this stuff that has to happen. What is one of the things you know about that sounds like this: the man of lawlessness. Who might the man of lawlessness be? Another thing we call this person that comes before Jesus returns. The Antichrist is another.
He said Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Don't listen to him if he says that they've already come. No.
What if Joe Biden is the Antichrist?
Everyone's gonna love the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Fell off a bus.
So there are some signs. This is what some people talk about, right? Like, what is lawlessness? What is lawlessness? What does that mean? No laws. Okay. So we can point to some things in our country that are starting to become lawless. Like we're starting to reverse laws. Things that used to be wrong or illegal are becoming, say that they're right and they're okay. So. But we still live in a time where we do have a lot of rules. But this is one of the attributes of the Antichrist is he's going to come and kind of like undo all the laws, and everything's going to be okay. We see our world is definitely trending towards that, where things that used to be wrong are now okay,
It's okay
and then promoted, right? Like all these things that we can think of. But also this person is going to be like loved by the world and like all kinds of good things. So that the man of lawlessness will come, that he's going to sit on the throne of God in the temple. Okay? This is one thing we talk about like with crazy Israel deals. I don't know if this is going to happen in your lifetime, but it could happen at any time where they rebuild the temple. What's on the temple where the temple used to be right now?
White
The White House? No. Did you know?
Muslim temple.
Yes, a Muslim shrine. So on the Temple Mount, where the temple that like Solomon built, and then Herod fixed it up, and then Nehemiah fixed it, or Ezra, they fixed it up again, and then Herod made it really nice. So that was there during Jesus' time. Is destroyed by the Romans in 70 A.D. And so there has not been a temple there for almost 2,000 years. Okay. So the temple was still there when this was written, right? So they're like thinking it could happen anytime soon. So I do believe that like the temple's going to be rebuilt before the end time. So that's one thing, but
That's a sign.
that's a sign. It wouldn't necessarily happen right away, but I think that is going to happen before the end. Okay, so but
Will we?
one thing he's talking about. Don't believe those who say, even if they claim to have had a spiritual vision or revelation, or it's a letter, suppose that. Don't be fooled by what they say. Do you guys know of any like people who have predicted the end times? Like they pick a date and say Jesus is coming back this day. You guys ever heard of that?
No, but
They did that.
1990s.
The Waco guy.
Yeah, there's guys like that. There's the Halley's Comet people who are like, maybe that wasn't. They didn't say Jesus is coming back, but like this comet's flying and then the spaceship behind it, and we're gonna go
There's
up
a
in it.
spaceship behind it.
Okay, you guys. There was a local one. Like just 10 years ago, there was a billboard in Linden that said there was a date on it that said when Jesus was coming back. Like there are people. Whoever started the Jehovah's Witnesses started with an end times prediction, and then it like came and passed and didn't happen. And then now they have a church. I don't know, but like there are lots of different people over history who have like I did the math. I added up all the letters in the book of Revelation, and it says that in 1982 Jesus is coming back. Like
That was a
So-
people thought we were gonna get raptured.
these things, you guys will probably hear. Oh, the solar. Yes. Okay. Perfect. That just happened. There were definitely people saying that when the solar eclipse happens, Jesus will come back because the solar eclipse crosses 7 cities called Nineveh.
What
And-
does that have to do with anything?
I don't know, but they were convinced that the solar eclipse was going to be Jesus' return. Okay, so you guys will absolutely hear people who predict the end times. That'll happen again and again and again. It happened back then, and it will continue to happen. When I was young, it happened to you guys.
The world we're in today and the world we're in tomorrow.
Because what happens when you predict the end of the world? Let's just think about the motivations here.
You're adding to scripture.
Okay, yes, but think about like practically. If I'm a leader of people and I predict the end, what happens?
You're popular.
I get a lot of popularity. I get a lot of fame, notoriety, and probably money, and a bunch of followers and people. Because people love.
Until the day comes. Yeah, you can.
This is something to be careful about because people love this stuff, right? Revelation and end time stuff, you do got to be careful with it. It's in our Bible. It's important to study and learn, but it's not what we're supposed to live for. It should give us a hope, but it's not the only book of the Bible we should study, right? It does teach us things but there's a lot we don't know too, and a lot we'll never know. So don't make your whole Christian experience about trying to figure out when Jesus is coming back. That's not what God has for us to live on this earth, okay? Be careful with that stuff. It's kind of like Christian candy, okay? I've taught through Revelation. I think but it's like, this is really cool, but it's not going to fill you up and make you a strong, healthy person if that's the only thing you eat, okay? End time stuff should give you hope, and we should know it, okay? But it's not what it's all about. Yes?
I was reading this book, and they're talking about cults. The reason cults get so popular is because they predict when the world is going to end. Then it doesn't happen. People get more devoted.
Yes.
And it's weird.
And then, okay, that one that happened in Linden, they picked another date, a year later. We got it wrong. We did the math wrong. It's going to happen then. It still didn't happen. Anyway, this happened to the Thessalonian church. It'll happen to us. Finally, there's this other thing connected to this. Because they thought the end was coming so soon, they're still stuck in that. They didn't really listen to Paul. They stopped working. They quit their jobs. And Paul goes a little bit harder here, and he says, if there's anyone who does not work, they should not eat. Okay? So this is not saying people who cannot work, right? Maybe they're disabled or something, or they're really old. But people who refuse to work. Here it is in 3 chapter 10. Those who are unwilling to work will not get to eat. You cannot just freeload on the Christian community, right? Because the Christian community, it's a wonderful thing. We should love each other. We should take care of each other. We give each other meals when bad things happen. If you lose your job, maybe people will help. I remember Henry, your family. My friend was Josh during COVID. He was unemployed, and you guys gave him a bunch of work to do, built your pool and stuff. That's so cool, right? That you guys could fill in and help him contribute. You didn't just give him money. You gave him a job. That's so awesome. He could work. He had an able body. So it's important that we work hard, that we try to provide ourselves. Stuff happens, and we should take care of each other's needs, but we also shouldn't take advantage of that goodness and gifts and generosity, right? Just because the church has a meal program or benevolence funds doesn't mean, oh, sweet, I don't have to get a job. I'll just get free food from the church. That's not the purpose of it, right? We should all contribute. If you are unwilling to work, you should not eat, right? Work is important. Work is valuable. First Thessalonians said, we should not be a burden on anyone by choice. If something happens, and we need help, that's what the help is for. But we should not just try to live off other people. We should be contributors and hard workers, okay? Never get tired of doing good. All right. So it's short. That's what that 2 Thessalonians is all about. Let's watch the video. All right, so 2 Thessalonians. Kind of a repeat of some of the things. I find it interesting that even though they got a letter from Paul, it just kind of speaks to human nature. They got a letter from Paul specifically addressing their problems, and it didn't just magically make everything better. They still are struggling with this. They didn't really get it, and I don't know if they really got it that much after the second letter either. But
wasn't there 4 letters?
No, there's just the 2 to the Thessalonians.
That was Corinthians.
Yeah, the Corinthians got 4 letters, 2 that we don't know about. That's right. We don't know of any other letters to the Thessalonians. Paul did, though. You saw it last week, Henry, right? That Paul also went back to Thessalonica on the 3rd missionary journey. So Paul did get back to them in person, which would be interesting. Does Acts talk about that much? I forget.
Do any of these churches still exist?
No.
Could we?
Yeah.
Like the buildings?
Like the
Well,
actual
buildings
church,
or the
like
people?
the people.
Like,
Have any of them survived?
it's a good question.
Constantly had.
Like their constant like church survival. I don't know. Like
They'd be in Rome.
they maybe. So probably not like how you think. Like it's not like the First Baptist Church at Thessalonians.
Because it's the original church. It must be the best.
Like just continuing on and on. Like so much persecution, and then the huge changes that the Roman Catholicism brought. So in 300, when like so after Nero, so after after our Bible was completed, right? Basically, all happened in the first century. All of this was written down in the first century. Anything that was written later was determined that it wasn't part of the Bible. So a lot more history happened, right? So in 70 AD, Jerusalem was overthrown by the Romans, right? And then the Christians were really scattered. And then I'm about to go into a long history, but anyway. But then but Christianity kept growing and growing and growing under the Roman Church, so much so to the point that Constantine embraced Christianity and made Christianity official Roman religion. And so that totally changed the landscape of Christianity.
So we could just say the Vatican is the oldest.
Yeah, maybe. Oldest going, the Roman Church, yeah, probably. There's the church in Ethiopia, which is even older. So the Ethiopian eunuch, they kind of say they've had a church going since, 33 AD kind of thing. Because the Ethiopian eunuch went back to Ethiopia, and outside of Jerusalem, he was one of the first churches established. So anyway, you can go to these places and see they have Paul missionary travel things. You can go to Turkey, and go to Greece, and go to these cities and see things.
It's like
pretty
4
cool.
separate vacations.
I want to do it someday. I've been
And
Israel.
the fourth one, you don't leave.
Oh, you copy the missionary journeys? That would be sweet. Okay, Jesus. A lot deals with Jesus' second coming in this letter. He's coming back to overthrow the man of lawlessness. Is how 2 Thessalonians talks a lot about. Key verse, I picked 3:5. It's kind of like this cool summary. May the Lord direct your hearts into God's love and Christ's perseverance. So it's kind of like a summary of the perseverance part under the suffering and persecution they're experiencing, for them to do the right things. The Lord is directing their heart, as they discern between false teachers and false letters, for the Lord to direct your hearts, God's love for one another, for them to be a body of Christians. Paul commends them for their love. They are a loving congregation that cares for each other. Paul commends them for that, but I think that's a cool key verse. All right, timeless truth. I couldn't pick one again. I had one and then I picked other ones. What you blank for shapes what you blank for. Any guesses?
I know. It really bugs me. You take your H, make the H a little stand out. It looks like W and space
I know.
Any guesses? What's
I
it?
was like
What
W
you
and
blank for?
There you go.
Okay, thinking about eternity and Jesus coming back. What you blank for shapes what you
Live for. What
Yes.
you pray for is what you live for.
Okay, I have
Or
what you
hope.
for. Perfect. What you hope for shapes what you live for, right? So your hope in eternity. I think that's the best response to end time stuff, right? That we should have hope there, and it should shape how we live, right? It's not all about that, the end. It shapes what we live for. Kind of like we make the most of our time on earth. And then I have that God is just and God is in control. God is just, talking about how God's going to punish evil. I think that was a really big theme and an important thing to remember, that in the middle of persecution and suffering that we have to endure, God will bring justice, and God is in control. Speaking of the end times, speaking of persecution, I don't know, which one's best? There's three there.
I think
the first one.
the first one here.
Yeah. I think
So
the
if I
third
vote
one.
for fire,
God's in control. So God's in control over persecution and times. What we worry about, God's in control. All right, that's a book. 2 Thessalonians. Thank you.